So this presentation is a presentation that I gave at the FIE conference, Frontiers in Education conference in El Paso, Texas in October of 2015. And I am just going to go ahead and repeat the presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and start. So this presentation is on taxonomy of faculty assumptions about students. And as I go through this, I want us to constantly remember that this is about the assumptions that faculty make about students. It's not really about students, it's about the assumptions. I'm from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and I wrote this paper with my co-author, Aaron Estrada, who is in psychology and child development. I am in industrial and manufacturing engineering and have been doing engineering education research for quite some time. The way I'm going to start this is I'm going to have two different introductions, and then I will go through the consequences of the assumptions, the taxonomy itself, some theory behind the taxonomy, mapping of the interviews onto the taxonomy, and then the next steps we are thinking about. So this is the first assumption. This is the first introduction. I know all of you would rather be someplace else, but this is going to be really important for you to understand all these things I'm talking about today, and much of it will be on the exam, so I would really ask you to put away your laptops, put away your phone, and really have your full attention on the things that I'm talking about today. It will be on the test, so like as I said, you need to make sure that you do your own work and don't make sure that you understand this for yourself as we go through this. This is the second introduction. Thanks for being here. I'm really, really excited about sharing these things that I'm thinking about. I'm excited to hear your input on it and how you might be interested in some of these topics. If at any point in time you need to get your laptop out or your phone, or even if you have to leave, you're welcome to do so. I appreciate your attention, but I know that everybody can manage their own life, and so that's the assumption I have when we're doing the presentation. So, did both of those feel like different kinds of, did both of those feel different? The first felt a little bit more sort of frightening or stressful than the second. And that's the kind of thing I want to illustrate, that we hold assumptions about who the students are, and when we do anything in the classroom, we work from those assumptions. So I have a little bit of a graphic here to kind of trace what happens in the classroom when we're doing these, when we are functioning with these under these kinds of assumptions. So we all would agree with the statement that teachers should have high expectations for students. Well, what that means for some of us is that we might say the students must be forced and they will only do what I tell them, nothing more. So if that is our basic assumption, then this leads to us saying things like, I expect you to do all the homework problems by tomorrow. And so they do the homework problems. And what that leads to is many, many homework problems. On the other side, we could hold a different assumption. In this case, I might hold the assumption that students love to learn and are interested in many things, and they will work hard if they're engaged. So I will tell them things like, let's meet tomorrow to discuss your goals for learning in this course. Can you think about that and prepare for the discussion? Which then leads to some more innovative and interesting kinds of like things you might not ever expect. So this then becomes, in the top case, it becomes evidence of students' limited ability because they just produce all the things we told them to do, and it becomes evidence of that. In the case of having more open or positive assumptions about the students, we can look for evidence of innovation, that the students are actually able and willing to do some creative, amazing things. Now, I want to talk a little bit about what's the basis for some of these ideas about assumptions. The first one is this idea of self-fulfilling prophecy, and it was first mentioned by Rosenthal and Jacobson in 1968 in a paper that's called Pygmalion in the Classroom. And you might have heard of this. It's kind of a famous study. And what they did is they told teachers in an elementary school, I think it might have been second grade, that certain students were what they called spurters. And spurters meant they were on the verge of much academic gain. So be clear that they deceived the teachers and randomly chose students to assign a spurter. And they did it because they said they did a test to identify which were spurters. And what happened was at the end of the year, they did it for a full year, is that those students did have quite better academic gains than the students who were not spurters. Now, lots of people have been trying to replicate this study, and the only way they can ever replicate it is when they actually deceive the teachers. So they can't replicate it by saying, act like this, act like you believe the students can do the work. You actually, as a faculty member, you actually have to believe the students can do the work. And that's a really interesting study and an interesting understanding. Also with human subjects committees, it's very difficult now to do any kind of deception, which is right, but that's why they've had a really hard time repeating this study. Another study more recently is the mindset work by Dweck, the idea that if teachers believe that students can learn, have a more flexible mindset, then actually students will be able to do that. And there's been some work on that. Also, stereotype threat. This is something you might be familiar with, that if you are in a certain underrepresented minority that has some characteristics that are assigned to them, that you actually might perform at that level. So if you think girls are bad at math, then the stereotype threat is that you actually will behave like that. As a woman, you will behave like the particular stereotype. And that's sort of the underlying assumption about your ability that people hold. Also, I've been influenced here by Carl Rogers and his idea of unconditional positive regard, which is that really if we hold positive regard for students or for any people, that's actually how they can grow and learn. And that holding of positive regard is very important in any kind of individual change process, including education. And then the last thing is this idea of classroom incivilities. A really good article by Boyce on this, where he talks about the ways that teachers complain about students' incivilities, which are, being rude in class. And that what he found is that it's more often that the student incivilities are correlated with the teacher's incivilities. So when he observed and interviewed and talked to both faculty and students, he found a large correlation in the way that teachers behaved in the way that students behaved. So we have a big influence in the classroom. So going back to this kind of graphic, what Erin and I had decided to do is that we really wanted to look at this particular part of it. So there's a lot of other things, like how we behave in the classroom, how the students behave with faculty. But what we were really interested in is, could we somehow map the assumptions that faculty hold about students so that we could have a full understanding of that. This also relates to things in systems and change management, that we get at the lowest level intervention, which is at the paradigm level or at the assumptions level, they might be able to change the system. So we really wanted to understand at that basic level, what are the assumptions that faculty hold about students. So we developed this taxonomy, and the way we developed it is we got together with a group of faculty I guess it was in May of 2014, and we had them sort of try to collect all kinds of assumptions that that faculty have about students. And we sorted them into this kind of taxonomy. And it's really still in development, but this is the basic taxonomy. So there's 4 areas. 2 of them are internal, sort of inside of the student, and 2 of them are external. So the internal are, and again, remember, this is assumptions faculty hold about students, but we're saying this is internal to the students, their motivation to be there, to be in the classroom, and their behavior. So how they behave in the classroom, how engaged they are. And then we think there's an external part of that, which is preparation and the system. So the preparation, are they ready for this class, both in content and in study skills? And then the system is, how much of a supportive system do they have? Do they have a supportive culture? Do they have a supported family system or friends system? So looking at the particular system that they're in. Now, what I'm going to do is we're going to go through some of the theories behind the taxonomy. I have to say that this is the area that I am least able to explain. This is the stuff that Erin was working on as a psychologist, but I'll do my best to try to go through what are the theories basis for this taxonomy. So in the area of motivation, we really drew a lot from self-determination theory, which is Deci and Ryan, that people are energized or activated to a goal, and looking at why, how much they're energized or activated, and the type of orientation. So Deci and Ryan spelled out internal motivation or intrinsic motivation that we all understand, or internal regulation, which is, am I doing this for my own good? There's also extrinsic motivation, am I doing it for a grade or for pay? And then amotivation is not motivated at all. So we use that theory in the area of motivation. And the area of behavior, we looked at things like, from a student's point of view, what's the expectancy value or the locus of control? Where is the control for what they're doing? Is it inside themselves, or is there some sort of external authority figure controlling them? We also looked at this in interactions of individuals with the environment. So it's not really just internal, but in a particular learning environment, people have different orientations and act different ways in their own behavior. And then preparation, we looked at content, knowledge, and readiness to learn. Connolly and French did some work on that. Are the students actually in a place where they can learn? Is it the right kind of content, and is the right kind of environment? There's also a lot of literature on the preparation sort of in the area of social capital of first-generation college students. Do they understand the system of education enough to be in a place where they can actually learn? Then the systems area, we looked at sort of ecological models. Bonfen-Brenner had this model where they have a microsystem, which is at the smallest level, like inside of somebody, and then the mesosystem, the close people around you. The exosystem might be the institution, and the macrosystem might be the culture that someone's in. So looking at all those different levels to see how people are within the system. There's also this, again, with first generations or underrepresented minorities, the literature on sense of belonging. Do they actually see themselves within the system that they're in? So all of this helped us to develop this taxonomy, and we are actually really excited about applying this, and we've applied it in a couple different ways. But the first way is I took the initial comments, the initial assumptions that we collected in May 2014, and I mapped it onto this taxonomy. So I'm just going to go ahead and read this so you can see sort of the range of comments. In the area of motivation, at the highest level, we say students come passionate and excited. And then we say a little bit lower, students are goal-oriented and attend for a reason. They only care about a good grade. Again, that's kind of the area of extrinsic motivation. They say, tell me what I need to know for the test, and then the students don't care. So you can see sort of the range for motivation. In the area of behavior, we say students want to help each other, so they're cooperative. Students like sharing and talking. Students respond only to punishment. They are not listening in class, and students cheat. So again, this range from cooperative, collaborative, ready behavior to sort of what we would call immoral, bad behavior in the area of not listening and cheating. Area of preparations, we say students are competent, students are all technology savvy, they don't know, and then maybe a little bit lower, they don't know how to learn, they think learning is memorization, students lack basic skills, students don't know how to handle failure, they're unprepared or not prepared. So again, that range. In the area of systems, all students can learn, they have the ability to learn, everyone has a story, students are on a high-speed rail, the majority need to work to pay for education, and the social environment will not let them succeed in a field that speaks to them. So we see this whole range in the area of the system support also. So that's pretty much as far as we've gotten. We're working ahead in the area of trying to map interviews to these taxonomies. But also the next step is to actually look at this whole system and say, are there relationships between assumptions and pedagogies that are used in the classroom? Are there relationships between assumptions and reality of the students? So do we make correct assumptions about students? And I'm also really interested in assumptions and grades. So that's kind of my particular thing, looking at correlative classroom activity and particularly grading. So thank you for listening to this. I hope you found this helpful and interesting. Our contact information is there on the bottom. We're at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, Erin Estrada, and Liz Schlemer. Thanks very much.